Um, Today, this is our first gathering. We're also going to have one exactly 4 weeks from today on March 17th. We've had our introductions. The ones who are not here are Greg Woodell. He lives in West Hollywood. He was actually, I believe, the very first one to sign up. And I don't recall exactly how he got the information, but he was very excited and fascinated by the idea of the pilgrimage. He is retired and lives by himself, and so he does seem to have a very, very strong interest in just getting immersed in the culture and history of the of our heritage. Father Norm Supanchek, we've already talked about, and Carmen down below, Clotilde, Lucy has talked about. The last one is Martin Dodwell. There was somebody that I invited some months ago to the pilgrimage who was not able to make it. She is a Shakespeare scholar who lives in, currently lives in Michigan. And she was not able to make it. It was kind of sad because she really wanted to, but she suggested a friend of hers who also studied with her and is a friend of some other mutual friends in England, Martin Dodwell. So I have been in touch with him by Skype and have also his contact information, and he is making the arrangements also through his flight arrangements through executors. So he will be arriving very close to the same time the rest of us will arrive on the, we will be taking Turkish Airlines flight 10, I believe it is, as is here. Flight 9 is the one that goes from Istanbul down to LA. It is currently over Idaho, it looks like. And it's scheduled to land at 4:20, and its actual estimated time of arrival is, unfortunately I don't have the same thing on both screens. Anyway, 4:23. And then Turkish Airlines 10, flight 10, which is the one that we will go over on. It obviously has not left yet because it is the same plane. And it is scheduled to leave at 6:45. It actually estimated time of leaving is 6:59. Turkish Airlines is absolutely wonderful.
Yes.
I have never found it to be on time. At least not in this series of flights. They're just not quite able to get their timing together. I'm not sure exactly why. But usually they make up for it, and usually we're not too late in arrival. So if you want to have some fun tracking our flights, just Google TK9, really, and TK10, and it will link you to FlightAware that does the tracking.
What time will you be arriving in Istanbul? Their time?
Their time, we arrive around 5:30.
Oh, okay.
5:30.
All right, so you don't see the tulips the first day?
Probably not.
That was lovely.
We may also be a little early for tulips. I'm not really sure.
We have to excuse ourselves, Father.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Let's go to our map, and we can kind of try to be, let me see, one thing
Doug.
I'm going to do is pull this one over on here. Okay. We arrive on April 1st in the evening, 5:30-ish, in Istanbul. We'll have a hotel near the airport, and the hotel is the Titanic Port Hotel. In case you want to see its website, there's its website. And although that's not the view from the Titanic Port Hotel, but all of these hotels really do have some very nice websites, and you'll have the link to them on your itinerary.
You're not going to go to the area of the Madison?
Not the first night.
Okay.
Not the first night. Because we will be leaving early in the morning for Izmir.
Oh. And you're going to have lunch there?
We are planning to have lunch, and once we arrive in Izmir, let me just get, here's the map of the route in Izmir. We arrive down here. That's where the airport is. We'll be taken to B on here is St. Polycarp Church, which is right downtown. We'll have Mass there. So that will really be our opening Mass, our beginning Mass for the pilgrimage. After that, we'll go to the Denise restaurant, which is the fish restaurant, which is Aiden's favorite, where they have a wonderful baked fish in bechamel sauce, in a white, they call it milk fish. And it really is extremely good if you like fish. If you're not a great fish eater, they'll have other things. But you can order, this will be lunch that you order yourselves. Then we will go and see some of the various areas of the city. We'll walk along the waterfront a bit. We'll also go to the Agora, kind of an open-air museum. And then we'll take the bus down to, down to here. This is all about an hour's trip. We'll go through and by near the old city of Ephesus and go out to the port town of Kushadasi. That's where all the tour boats land, and we'll probably see some of the cruise ships, and we'll probably encounter some of the cruise people. You sort of want to get them out of the way. But we'll get there in the evening and be overnight there in Kushadasi. Please resist the temptation to pronounce it Kusadasi, as many people do. Following that, the next 2 days, I won't go through the detailed itinerary, but the next 2 days will be up here in what's called Selçuk. The House of the Virgin Mary. Well, let me see. I probably can get that up here on the map. I'm getting very confused here. Okay, the thing is, this is able to control two different screens. And usually I have the two screens side by side, so I can flip easily between the two of them. But now here are the routes for Ephesus. What we will begin with is coming up here to the top of the ruins. And St. Luke's tomb, what is purported to be St. Luke's tomb, probably isn't, is right here by this parking lot. And then we will walk down this road to through the ancient ruins. This is the terrace houses, which we will see. The cave of St. Paul, which hopefully we'll be able to visit, is right up here. And then we'll go by the theater and down to the double church of the Virgin Mary, where the Council of Ephesus was held. We'll get back on our bus down here at this parking lot. And from there, go to someplace that we have not stopped at before, but the Temple of Athena, which is right down here. Largely because we had to chop in the past.
Right.
So we will visit the temple, what's left of the Temple of Athena, which is basically kind of a swampland with one column left. And that was one of the 7 wonders of the world. And then we go here to the Basilica of St. John, which you can see the outline and columns from it, and they have we'll see 2 wonderful baptistries. One is at the Church of the Virgin Mary, which I just mentioned, and one here at the Church of St. John. We'll be seeing a number of other baptistries. Probably we'll have Doug walk through them in remembrance of what he would have done just a couple of nights earlier. From there, we go to the museum. And in the museum, we will see the artifacts that have been dug up in these various places. One thing to be aware of, when you are going through ruins, what you see is old marble columns and outlines of buildings and that kind of thing. It all looks kind of barren. You will have to remember that those buildings originally, the Greeks and the Romans were not that keen I will stand corrected with any of this kind of stuff from Linda if need be. But they weren't all that keen with the appearance of plain, ordinary, polished marble. They painted them brightly, so that, especially when they would have carved scenes. Most of the time, those carved scenes in the marble would actually be painted very realistically. And oftentimes, the decoration of the buildings would also be colored. What we see now, as I say, are just the plain marble with the paint, for the most part, worn off. We'll see some instances, actually, like the Alexander sarcophagus in Istanbul, where there's traces of the pigment on the marble. Now, the other side of it is the stuff that they dug up while excavating there will usually be in the local museum. So if you want to see what they dug up as they were digging through these ruins that we'll tour, that will be at the museum. So I always see, and it's very, very important, that touring the ruins and seeing the museums very much tend to have to go hand in hand. And then that just, opens up a whole new perspective, that this statue, I saw where it came from. This little whatever, household implement or whatever, came from that barren area that we walked through. One of the things that you'll see at the Ephesus Museum is a pretty good-sized model reconstruction of the Temple of Athena. And when you see that, and sort of marvel at what's left of it, which is virtually nothing, you will see something of why it was one of the 7 wonders of the world. Because it even from the model, it was just a truly, truly stupendous building. Then, this yellow road here, the next day, that's where we go to Mary's house. And we will spend, if you'll notice, Mary's house is, for one thing, it is right in between the old area of Ephesus and the current city called Seljuk, and the Aegean Sea. And from this spot, you can actually look down on the valley and on the Aegean Sea. And it'll be just a truly great place to spend and get a much clearer, cleaner view of it here. Spend the day. And there's a religious house of women and a religious house of, I believe they're Capuchin friars who are there. And they are going to be welcoming us and allowing us to wander in places also that are not part of what's open to the public. So we will be able to spend quality time there. Following that, let me see. The next place that we go following that, we will go to Pamukkale. And we'll be several nights there. And it's a place of wonderful hot springs. It also, and I'm not going to go into too much detail on this, but it's a special area that is very important for studying St. Paul. Because from Ephesus, St. Paul spent a couple of years there, and he developed something of a new missionary strategy of being based there and training missionaries. Epaphras was, I believe, the one who went and evangelized the Lycus Valley. Now there are three. Is this all coming back to you, Deborah?
Well, from the lectures at
Yeah,
St. Monica's.
that's what I mean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
The Lycus Valley, sadly, I did not really prepare a slideshow for this, so you're going to have to wait until we see it, but use your imagination a little bit. Where are we? Here we go. This is worth seeing in a little bit of detail. We'll be staying here at what's called the Pam Hotel. And Hierapolis is here. Hierapolis is the place where St. Philip's tomb is, where Philip was martyred, Philip the Apostle. And it was really a tremendously great, large city in the first century, and built over these hot springs. That this white here is calcium deposits flowing down the mountain, forming stalactites as it flows down. It's a marvelous, marvelous sight, unique, very unique in all the world. And there are thermal springs. We will have time to soak in the water in our hotel in between the various places that we go. Here are some of the ruins of the city, the amphitheater, and up here, a bit of a hike, is the Martyrion of St. Philip, which was a shrine that was built to his memory, basically, near his tomb. The tomb remained undiscovered until last year. And this past year, we did get a chance to see it, but it had only been excavated like during 6 months or so before that. The tomb is right next door to it, right about here. And so we will be able to spend some time there and have some reflection also on Philip and his significance. And then the next day will be spent on this itinerary. Starting from our hotel here, going down to Laodicea, here, where there's considerable excavation going on, some early Christian stuff as well as the apostolic times. It's still a very active archaeological site. Just last year, they discovered a completely unknown Byzantine basilica, which was one of the largest ones of the 4th century times. And hopefully it'll be open. Aiden snuck us in this past year, but hopefully it will be open for us to visit. Then we're going to go down to Aphrodisias, which is a major, major Roman site with some really, really outstanding architecture, including the this, the tetrapelon, it's called, which is kind of a, I guess I'm using it sort of as a logo for our pilgrimage. But it also has the best example of a temple to Aphrodite that was turned into a Christian church. And you can see a little something. I don't know if you're familiar with this, Linda, or you may have some, want to do a little further research.
Okay.
But they say it's the best example of sort of recycling the temple into use as a Christian basilica. And they will be able to give us a lecture on that too. I'm not going to put...
No pressure.
I don't want to put any pressure.
What do you do in your spare time?
On the way back, we will stop here and see Colossae. So what we will... And all that Colossae is a mound. It is as yet completely unexplored. I was getting to St. Paul's methodology. If you read the letter to the Colossians, if you read the letter to Philemon, it becomes evident that Paul was very connected with those churches through Epaphras, who was sort of his delegate as the one who established the churches there. You also have Laodicea and Colossae basically across the valley from each other. This is the Lycus Valley. And these three spots, Hierapolis, Colossae, and Laodicea, or Laodicea, were rivals. Hierapolis was known for its hot thermal waters and its healing qualities. Colossae was known for its icy cold spring water that produced a special quality of wool in the sheep that were raised there. Laodicea sort of was middling in between. You know, it didn't have any very great special source of water. And that's why Jesus, in the book of Revelation, in writing to the Church of Laodicea, says, you're neither hot nor cold, you're lukewarm. And therefore, I'll spit you out of my mouth. So there's a little interesting sideline there about the relationship of these three cities, which were originally established by St. Paul as churches. And it's very interesting to try to speculate the relationship between Paul and John, which there is virtually no documentation about. So, where do we go from there? I think if we reduce, yes. From there we go down to Antalya. And I think that's the point where, shall we take a break?
Yeah.
There